5, 4, 3.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider on Sports Talk 1050 WTKA, online at WTK.com. Sam Webb, Ira Weintraub on the other side, and of course, the MGoBlog Roundtable crew every Thursday at the 9 o'clock hour. Back with us in a very, very eventful week. There hasn't been a day this week that has began without some sort of significant news when it comes to the University of Michigan. Joining me to reflect and to look ahead is the man that started it all over at MGoBlog, Brian Cook, BC. Good morning. How are you?
I refuse to admit that I am Brian Cook.
We have Craig Ross. Craig, good morning. How are you?
Okay, introduce Seth first.
It's okay. Seth Fisher, you're next. How are you this morning?
I'm actually Craig Ross.
I'm actually confused. And now we have Craig Ross. Craig, what's up?
Yeah, I just have a 10-second story. Why I love Ann Arbor. Last night, my wife and I took David Nasternak to his first classical music production. And we went over to Rackham. And if you've never been at Rackham, it's a great place to see a concert. Just a beautiful place. And it was Jeremy Denk, who's a world famous pianist, and the Takas Quartet, which is probably the most famous string quartet in the world, playing Schumann's piano quartet in E flat major, Opus 47, a wonderful piece. And so we're there and we sit down, and what do I hear behind me? Conversation about being worn out by Jim Harbaugh. This is why I love Ann Arbor. But incidentally, the performance was spectacular. Especially the fourth movement, the Vivace movement. But I will say this: they left out the lumbago movement, which is a good thing because my back hurts. So anyway, that's my joke of the week.
You have no idea.
Please write us if you got that joke.
So Monday comes, and Monday afternoon, I want to say it's around 5 o'clock, was when Santa Ono announced that he had gotten a call that Jim Harbaugh has decided to remain at the University of Michigan. And so, the obvious sort of question that arises from that, like, wow, this is the Santa relationship really is front and center in this moment. That's the first thing that strikes you, because Santa said he was going to then tell Ward Manuel. But the thing that resonated with me as much was, here you had Jim Harbaugh deciding to remove his name from NFL consideration, Brian, without a deal done with Michigan, with no signed deal, with negotiations still ongoing, and the NCAA still looming. So there's that we'll get to coming up. And yet he decided to say, I'm out. I'm out with the NFL. I am here at Michigan. That, to me, it kind of lends more credence to what he had been saying about, hey, man, I love it. I want to be here. I'm not chasing the NFL. I know the Sparties and the Buckeyes all over my mention saying, he just didn't get an offer. He didn't let it get to the offer phase, Brian, even without the certainty of a contract in the NCAA here. That was significant to me. I wonder what you make of it.
Well, I think at this point they have the broad outlines of an agreement, I imagine. And I think for Harbaugh, like, I don't even know if the money really matters that much to him. Like, he's got enough money. I think it's more about respect and standing. And I think the way this went down was a little bit odd because Ono announces that he's happy that Jim Harbaugh's coming back and he's gonna tell the athletic director. I'm like, what? That's
right.
Even if that's how that happened, why would you say that? And I follow him on Twitter, and he's constantly tweeting about the stuff that he's doing, but he doesn't really seem to have that Dave Brandon self-aggrandizement gene. So that just felt strange. But I feel like it was probably a fairly easy decision for Jim Harbaugh because, as we discussed last week, the Denver Broncos are not going to the Super Bowl probably ever again.
Well,
The
someday.
sun will expand and engulf the earth, and the Denver Broncos will not have made a Super Bowl. But if that's the most prominent job that's hypothetically open for you, then it'd be crazy to leave. Because as we've discussed before, this team looks like a potential #1 overall team next year, depending on what happens with Georgia. So I don't think that decision was hard. He's got a championship team this year at Michigan, and whatever is going to happen in the NFL looked like a rebuild. So I think we're probably not out of the woods with this yet. But
you're killing me. But you're speaking the truth.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think that you have these things happen in back-to-back years, and it's not something that's still on his mind. Now, he's got something going at Michigan, and I think, he's got to think about where he wants to be long term, but I don't think that decision is made. I think that decision is still on the table. I think for 2023, the obvious answer is J.J. McCarthy, Blake Corum, Donovan Edwards, et cetera, et cetera.
Greg, what say you?
I'm just in some context, I guess I'm amused, and in another, I'm just dismayed. I mean, a year ago, Harbaugh said to us, all of us, that this wasn't going to be an every year event, and that turned out to be not true. It turned out that this event happened again this year. Now, I don't know how far along he got in these conversations or what these conversations were about. That's true, but it seemed like, after doing it a year ago, he pushed Michigan and its fans and Ward Manuel and the Ono into it right again, and I don't like it a lot. And the second part of this is, from Ono seems like the salt of the earth. Everybody loves him. Everyone who meets him loves him, and all good. But I didn't like his commentary very much. I didn't like what Ono said. I mean, Ono announces Harbaugh's coming back. This is like, the Firesign Theater hour of the Wolf News. Big light and sky slated for East. And so, yeah, Harbaugh's coming back, and he announces it. Why is he announcing it? And why is he announcing it this particular way? It seems to me Ono should be saying, going to Ward and saying, "Hey, Ward, you announce this." Or worst case, he announces it for himself and Ward, and not with the commentary, I just called Ward and told him Harbaugh was coming back, which I think is pretty close to what was said. I don't like that. I don't think the president of the university should be cutting the athletic director off at his knees. And so the whole thing has become a bad soap opera. I find it, I don't want to say alarming, but I find it disheartening.
Seth?
I mean, it's disheartening if you're Ward Manuel. I don't think Santa did it on, he doesn't do that kind of thing by accident, right?
I mean,
I don't
know if we want to read that much into it, right? Like,
no, I don't know, maybe not.
Like, I feel like the people are like reading the Kremlinology here, and it might just be like,
Angelique said something yesterday, because she has the perspective as a Cincinnati alum of talking to Cincinnati folks, and she said before he got here, before Santa arrived, that people were telling her that it is going to be an adjustment for the athletic director, that the athletic director is going to quickly realize that he is different from other presidents, and that he is going to be very involved in athletics, like very involved. So almost as if to say, independent of who the athletic director is or what his presence or profile is, Santa is going to be involved in athletics. So when she said that, because look, it does raise questions. like are you putting your AD on notice? I mean, is this it does strike, it at least raises the question of what what does chain of command look like moving forward? Is he reporting? I understand why those questions are being asked, but when put against what Angelique offered as far as background is concerned, this might just be how Santa is and not be, some ulterior motive. I'm not saying it is or it isn't. I'm just offering it up as a possibility there. Seth.
Yeah, I didn't mean to lead. I shouldn't have led with that because that's the least interesting part of this to me. The more interesting thing is what is how committed is Harbaugh to this program, because really what he just did is got us back to the status quo. Last year he said, "I told Ward it's not going to happen. This is kind of thing's not going to happen again." We all believed it. I don't think we're going to believe it again without a contract. So the details of that contract are going to matter a lot. What's the buyout? What's the term? That's going to matter to us because, like Brian said, you can't go through this every single year. If they want, Michigan should be stepping up to be like, Alabama with an education right now. Like that's the position they could be in now that they're getting to the playoffs, now that they're beating Ohio State, they're winning the Big Ten, all those magic things that we were looking for in 2016, 2017, they now have. And in order to capitalize on that, you have to capitalize the momentum, and that means not spending the first 2 weeks of every year waiting around to see if the coach is going to leave.
Yeah, but I hear where you're coming from, Brian. That might just be the reality, right? At least, but here's the flip side. Look, he's not getting younger. I mean, every year you would think from an age perspective, and I'm not being an ageist here. I understand. Hey, you could have been around for the early days of Michigan football and still be Craig Ross, still be that guy, right? So I'm not saying just because he's getting.
Hey, are you firing me on air?
I'm not saying that just because he's getting older, he couldn't coach in the NFL. But I am saying, as he gets older, he becomes less appealing to the NFL. Wouldn't you say, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a break point there. How old is Bill Belichick? I think he's pretty old. And I mean, they just had Lovie Smith coach, I think, the Texans for 1 year. So age isn't probably that much of a barrier. It might be something where there's a point where it's just not going to happen. But I think as long as he's performing at Michigan, and I think it would be pretty surprising if he didn't perform at Michigan next year, he'll be of interest because the NFL is not really thinking on super long-term timelines. If they get good 3-4 years out of him, that'll be enough. So I don't necessarily think that's going to be a major part of their thought process.
Yeah, at this point, it's hard for me to believe that any recruit isn't at least going to be asking this question.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 2 years in a row. And so I don't care what the buyout. First of all, I don't like buyouts. I think if Harbaugh doesn't want to be here,
you said this last week.
I know. But
Yeah.
beyond that, now it's a perpetual question for anybody who's interested in coming into the program. And I think there's ways around that, but I won't.
I give him this. He understands that because I know that was a very specific line of questioning. And Jaden Davis's dad told me how he was going to ask it. He said, "I'm going to ask him, Coach, don't tell me you don't know the future. I understand what you say to everyone else. I understand what you say publicly. Are you going to be here past next year? Period. Yes or no?" Kind of thing. And so I'm waiting to get the answer to what Harbaugh said, but he made it clear that was going to be the point of the conversation before they had it. And so now I'll be getting some feedback on that today about exactly what Harbaugh said in response.
Well, Jaden Davis's dad is a very smart guy because that's certainly the right question. And the notion that who knows what the future tells is nonsense. And I mean, it's insulting and it's nonsense. So, I mean, his dad asked the right question and put it the right way then, in my opinion.
The fact that it's a question means that I pretty much think we have an answer. Harbaugh, he's not looking for his exit right now. He's not like, oh, I need to get to the NFL as soon as possible. But I think that it's something he wants to do. And I think, Sam, you mentioned he's 62 years old, I think. So, it's going to have to happen.
He's 59. He's 59.
59. Yeah. So yes, in 3 years, he'll be 62. And 3 years after that, he'll be 65, which is when really you start tapering off, and we've seen it with many times. Coaches just start to lose what they can do, and that's going to lower his value to Michigan as well. So if we don't have a plan for when Harbaugh is done, that's got to be part of the conversation now. Unless Harbaugh says, I want to coach here till I retire. Plan on me here till I'm 65. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not taking any more NFL calls. That's done. But he said it last year to the fans and everybody, and that didn't happen. So it needs to be some, and this is why the buyout matters, because the buyout says, look, if you want to buy him out next year, it's going to cost you $40 million. It's impossible. If you want to buy him out in 3 years, it's going to cost $7 million. That's pretty possible. That's what the buyout can do. And I know you don't like it, but it's a contract that's supposed to say what each party's commitment is to each other.
Well, as long as we're on that topic, doesn't Harbaugh already have a contract with Michigan?
Yes,
because I think the answer to that is yes. And
So-
is it a good contract? I think it is $7 to $9 million a year. And so,
He's,
and if money isn't relevant, why are we even talking about this? And
he's a
why
top 5 coach. He deserves to be paid like a top 5 coach. Anyway,
really, even if he has a contract?
but yeah, the money doesn't matter. I love Joel Klatt's. I wish this was true, but I love that Joel Klatt's take was maybe Harbaugh is using this opportunity as a negotiating tactic for his program.
Well,
I
that
would
could
love
be.
this to be true, that he's saying, I need money for the assistant pool, I need money
Sure.
for recruiting, I need a commitment for NIL, and I need you to tell the NCAA people that they're useless and to go away.
I would love that if that's true. If that's the reality,
So
I would be happy.
Yeah.
It can be all of those things.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
think he does want to be paid like the coaches who've made the playoffs in back-to-back years. I think Ryan Day is very much a that was the standard that was used in the contract extension that he just signed. When he signed that deal, Ryan Day was making $7 million. He has the Ryan Day deal before Ryan Day extended in, what was it, March or May? At which point Ryan Day got the Mel Tucker deal. He got the 9.5, which Mel Tucker shouldn't get. He's the outlier. He's the $1 million house in a neighborhood of $200,000 houses, right? That's what they essentially did in paying him that much money. But it does raise the bar, and now that's what you have Ryan Day getting. So if Jim Harbaugh did what Ryan Day did, I think the thought is show of respect, show of appreciation, at least from his vantage point, is I should be paid like that. That's how you show respect. That's how you show appreciation, right?
It's not a respect
do you
thing.
do it?
All of those contracts say the same thing. Don't ever leave. Don't even try to take this guy. The NFL can come for Ryan Day because he is an NFL prospect, but maybe even better one than Harbaugh because he's younger and he's got an offensive mind. But Ryan Day's contract says Ryan Day is never going to leave Ohio State. Nick Saban's contract, which guarantees he's going to be the highest paid coach in the NCAA, it says nobody can come along and take Nick Saban because that's an instant way to make your program. And Mel Tucker's contract says the same thing. We're Michigan State. We recognize we're Michigan State. Nobody who's anybody is going to want to coach here. So we're going to pay this guy enough that LSU is going to be like, we don't really want to offer him that.
I think it'd be funny if Michigan offered Harbaugh $1 billion a year, and then Saban's contract went up to match, and then Harbaugh was like, "Never mind."
I think it would be funny.
Well, look, knowing him, look, I don't know all the details about the asks along the other lines. I do know, look, he wants to be paid like the other coaches who've done what he's done. That much I can say with absolute certainty. But knowing him, it stands to reason that in doing that, he's going to ask for more money for his assistants too. He's already been pushing on the NIL side of things, and you see Michigan. Now there are 4 collectives that they endorse, so they're making strides along those lines. It is absolutely the case that he has shown. And this is where I think if you are frustrated, and I hear the frustration coming, look, I hate covering it, right? But if you want to take a glass half full perspective, Craig, this is where it comes from. he decided the interest from the Broncos was sincere. It was legit. I mean, they were talking to people at a very, very thorough level, thorough enough to even before they did the interview. You know, I talked to a guy. He said, "Man, they interviewed me for almost 2 hours about Harbaugh, asking this and asking that, and you know, an agent guy said the same thing. They were asking all kind of. They were really, really vetting him. There's a chance that could have progressed to an offer, like legit. And no, and the other thing about knowing him is, yeah, it. To Brian's point, maybe they are on the Super Bowl team this year, but this is the kind of dude who thinks wherever he goes, he's gonna fix it, and he's gonna fix it quick because he's done that. That's what he's done, bro. Everywhere he's gone, he's fixed it quick. So why would he think this would be any different? Right. So I think it's significant that now we move over to the NCAA piece. That again, maybe they have a framework for a deal done. I know Harbaugh's people will say, hey, he don't have the numbers in front of him. I get it. I don't need to hear that either. I understand. Waiting for the deal to be brought together. But they at least have a framework together. Michigan does that. They've agreed that a deal is going to get done. But it's not in front of them. And then you got the NCAA. And let's move to that. Story comes out last night that Michigan went, Brian, and conceded every point. They conceded the analyst coaching. They conceded the improper contact during COVID. They conceded the improper texting. They conceded the watching the workouts, right? And Harbaugh apologized. And yet now they are stuck on he lied. And it's so much so where there's an impasse for what reason I don't get, especially when they have conceded every other point.
Well, I mean, the other points are small beef, right? They're level 2 violations or whatever that don't mean anything. And someone at the NCAA wants a scalp, I guess. Like someone's got to be up their bonnet because they thought Jim Harbaugh was mean to them. And that's what it is, right?
Yeah, you could be.
It's like it's a personal beef between this investigator dude and someone who blew him off. And he's like, I'm an important person with good job security. And so that's what he's just going to try to press this. And so apparently Wetzel reports that, this is the impasse. The NCAA has no evidence that Jim Harbaugh lied, and Jim Harbaugh is not going to say I lied. And NCAA is like, but I don't like that. You're mean.
I was told that this was, and this is not from someone at Michigan, but someone with knowledge of this who said that story is 100% accurate. Like it is 100% accurate. And so the other takeaway is if they had proof. Now, how do you prove someone's lying? How do you prove someone they don't recall, which is what is said in the story, versus it's a lie, it's a deliberate sort of misleading or misrepresenting of the facts. How do you prove that unless you have some physical evidence that they clearly didn't show, or you have someone that's willing to step up and say, yeah, they told me X, Y, or Z? They must not have that either. I mean, they have a former employee who's driving the recruiting narrative, but it doesn't sound like they have much more than that right now.
Well, I have no idea what they have, but I've been involved in these my entire lifetime. I've been involved in litigations my entire lifetime where one person comes in and said, you said that, or you did that. And the other side is looking like, their dog was just shot and going, what? I never said that. I never did that. And it's up to a judge or an arbitrator or someone to try and make sense of the stories. But yeah, you're often don't know and will never know what was said or what wasn't said.
You've not done one of these with the NCAA before. The NCAA could call up the investigators who just grabbed Weiss's server, right? Weiss's computer. Yeah. They could find emails from Jim Harbaugh to Weiss saying, hey, do you remember that time we went and got a burger with those 2 recruits? That was a good time. And then Harbaugh writing about it again a week before he said he didn't remember to the NCAA. Concrete proof from from state investigators. They could have that in front of them, and the NCAA is still 90% likely to just not be able to do anything about it. The NCAA has had way more against way bigger infractions, and they got nothing. And like this, these stupid lines about like, oh well, Jim Tressel lied, and that's what got him. No, it's not. Getting Tressel lying. Tressel lied about like paying players, and they had obvious emails saying that he knew what he was doing, and like that was getting Capone for tax fraud, right? They were going. They had all sorts of stuff, and they're like, okay, how are we going to get this guy? If they're going after Jim Harbaugh like he's Capone, it's got to be personal. There's nothing more to it.
I definitely think, this is my opinion, I think that the initiator, it definitely was personal. I don't think now do I know that for a fact? I don't. That is speculation on my part. But I think you have a person who feels like an aggrieved party who has an axe to grind and decided to sing, so to speak. And obviously Michigan, they've conceded that they're guilty on that front. But I also think that should be taken into account when you're trying to weigh whether the person, or in this case, Jim, whether he's lying. I mean, the person that you're listening to that brought this case, don't they have an agenda of some sort? Shouldn't you evaluate? Shouldn't you assess that? I mean, you would seem to me you would have to be leaning on that person pretty heavily in your assessment of whether Jim Harbaugh is lying. I don't know that to be the case, but I'm trying to figure out, like, what are you going to find moving forward? I understand some of the questions that they've asked. They were asking things like, who arranged these meetings, like these gatherings of recruits, right? Who was there? All the things that would make it seem like Michigan was orchestrating these recruiting weekends. They wanted to get to the bottom of that. It sounds like this is, at least from talking to, at least one of the players that they interviewed about it, right? And so, all right, you've gotten that information. They've conceded that these meetings happened. You seem to be okay with that. Your only issue is, did Jim Harbaugh, was he misleading about his recollection of the facts? I don't get why that has to drag out if you can't prove it. It would seem to me, if
nobody at the NCAA.
If you have proof of that, though, why wouldn't you bring it forth right now? Is my point.
Because nobody at the NCAA has any competence. If you worked in the NCAA since that Miami case, when they lost the last people that are worth anything at that office, if you work in NCAA compliance, you've gotten a job offer from some school's compliance office and took it. Because nobody wants to work at the NCAA. And if you're there and you show the slightest bit of competence, you're going to get snatched up by a much better job so fast. So everyone who's there are people who are just there because they want the title, or they have an uncle who got them the job or whatever. That's who you're dealing with.
Yeah, it may be. I don't know. Again, I don't know what dragging this out, what purpose it serves. You can't find any more relevant facts on things that they've conceded already. Is kind of the point to me. Unless you think you're going to find some evidence of him lying, Craig, at which point you're a lawyer. How do you prove someone is lying without tangible physical proof, which they clearly don't have, or someone that can step up and sort of contradict them and credibly say that person over there is lying and I know it and here's why?
Well, it's the same old, Sam. I mean, Harbaugh comes in and said, no, I never misled you about anything. And the person who's making the claim comes in and says, no, you told me whatever it is. And Harbaugh says, that's not true. I never told you that. How do you know? You don't. And who's ever making a decision, if there needs to be a decision needs to be made, then decides. And these things are hard to know. And, my point of view, I guess, is this. I don't know if Harbaugh misled them or not. I have no idea. And I don't know the motivations, but I do know this. I think it would be better if Michigan wasn't even making these minor violations, because it just feels like if Michigan was just following the stupid rules, then this wouldn't happen. And it seems to me that if anyone's going to get hammered by this, it's going to be Michigan. There
Well,
is
look,
some history of that.
I think at this point, all you can do is admit what you did and ask for
Right.
forgiveness. They've done that.
Yeah, I
They've
agree
done
with
that.
that. I agree with that, Sam. I mean, now that it's happened, it's happened. You say, hey, we screwed up. We're sorry. Let's move on. What's the penalty? And it sounds like that may not be good enough for the NCAA because they want Harbaugh to admit that he was a bad dog, which seems somehow pointless in the big scheme of things. But yeah,
Right.
I agree. I
Right.
hear your point.
I just don't understand what dragging this out is going to accomplish. It's not going to reveal anything else unless they are going to just investigate other things. At which point it brings into question: don't we hear all the time that the NCAA doesn't have a massive staff to be investigating all of these things, right? So now you're going to go on wild goose chase at Michigan? Doesn't make any sense.
They have no relevance whatsoever. They've got mud on their face every single time. They have the FBI give them a case against Kansas and Arizona, and they got nothing out of that. They had a booster giving them everything about Miami, and they got nothing out of that. These guys are the most incompetent organization on the planet, and they're aware of it enough to know that they need to have some sort of splash. What is the one school of any significance that possibly could take them seriously? Michigan. So they get a couple things. They're like, okay, let's get their AD. Let's get the president. These guys take us seriously. And then what happens? Michigan's like, you're trying to get us to admit, lying about, sorry, officer. I don't remember if I was going 35 or 30 in the 25 zone. That's what they're after here. And they're after it because they're so incompetent, they need a W because they haven't won a single case in years.
Gotcha.
Could be right. I don't know.
All right, we need to get to a break. We'll come back on the other side and talk about this, the developments with Matt Weiss. So stay tuned for that. Yeah, I know. I know. Folks, before we do, want to tell you about a great opportunity for those of you who are in the RV market. You know, those of you who like to get out and camp with your family, go to the different parks and whatnot. Our friends at Larry's RV Center, they are back. They are back with their open house event. We told you all about it last year. A lot of folks, a lot of listeners went out and took advantage of the great deals. Well, January 24th through the 27th, they are back with those same opportunities all over again. Larry's RV's 4th annual open house super sales event, January 24th through the 29th at the American One Event Center in Jackson. That's just minutes off of I-94. Free admission and parking, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. every day. You get a huge selection of floor plans and models and pricing to fit your family's needs. You can be the first to walk through the 2023 floor plans. Again, go to the Larry's RV Center events.com. Again, it's Larry's RV Center events.com to pre-register. Get $1,500 off instantly. You get free hitch and sway with every purchase, $100 gas card with every purchase. Every RV is clearly marked with sales price and monthly payments. Again, Larry's RV's 4th annual open house and super sales event, 24th through the 29th, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. at the American One Event Center in Jackson. Be sure to check it out. We got to get to a break. Back on the other side with MGoBlog Roundtable here on Sports Talk 1050 WTKA, The Ticket.
And we are clear.
Yeah, man. So you saw the reports overnight. We'll get into this on the air. Is that he was hacking emails? He was hacking emails. Now, whose emails would be the question? But either way,
he's denying it, right? At this point, he's denying it, as I understand it. But I also understand that this is fairly easy to prove.
That's what they say, right?
So, you know.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
What is he trying to do? I mean,
I don't know.
Yeah, like hacking emails. Like, what does that mean? Like, what was he trying to like pretend to be someone else's email? Was he trying to see what people's emails were saying? Like,
I honestly 100% no inside intel at all on that. I don't know. I will say, and it's prudent because you don't know how it's going to turn out. I will say they've already started sort of kind of thinking about what do you do if this thing goes left. I mean, I think there was always a possibility, a distinct possibility that he would look to go back to the NFL anyway,
Hmm.
right? Kind of like McDonald in that regard, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, this kind of puts another couple weights on that scale.
Didn't they just hire a consequential person to be an analyst?
Yeah, Kirk Campbell.
Yeah.
Kirk
Quarterback
Campbell.
guy. So
Yeah. I wonder if this was something they saw coming. I don't know.
So
Well,
I don't no. So no.
No.
That Kirk Campbell coming was not tied to the belief that Weiss was going to. Kirk
Okay.
Campbell was brought by Gaddis. He's a Gaddis guy.
Oh, okay.
And so, but then Gaddis left and Kirk Campbell's still here. But what's significant to
Mhm.
me is Biff wanted Kirk to go with him to Charlotte and he didn't go.
Oh.
And that should, and that for an on-field coaching
On-field position, yeah.
right. And so that should really, really kind of, shoot off fireworks like, hey, what does that mean that he's not taking that job, right? So
Yeah, it must mean that Harbaugh told him that he had a future within Michigan's program at the very
there had been talk with the NCAA that they would expand the staff
right.
by one, and like you could have one more on-field coach. You wouldn't have an extra recruiter, I think it went, but you could have one more on-field coach. So you could, in that instance, you could elevate a Kirk Campbell. You probably would put him on the road recruiting and not even have Weiss do any recruiting.
well, they
at
also are
all.
changing the rule that Michigan got in trouble for. So you're going to allow
right,
how you can-
right.
right. They're doing the Mitch McGarry thing again. We're like nail Michigan as hard as you possibly can for something that we're getting rid of.
Right,
So,
but they
yeah.
for some reason they tabled it. It didn't. They decided not to vote on it or something. So, that possibility is still up in the air about being able to have, them both on staff. I just think that I don't think Kirk Campbell would be a slam dunk, but I think that he would be. He would.
I mean, they got to be having the conversation with Jaden Davis because this is his position coach right now. That's got like if they're going to be signing this thing and getting this done, and he is the coach staying? Oh, we enter distinctions. Oh, the quarterback coach. Like
I know they were going to ask Harbaugh a very pointed question about Matt Weiss last night.
Yeah.
Funny. So I can share this with the crew on the side. He said, we kind of connected with his dad was telling me. He said we connected with Weiss more than most. And I said, man, yeah, that's interesting. And he said the reason why is I told him he was a terrible recruiter. He said I told him he was a terrible recruiter, and then I told him how to recruit my son. I sort of went through, and he said, so we kind of established that candor.
About 20 seconds back on the radio.
That candor kind of helped us establish a relationship that they have a real connection now. So it's significant to them what Matt Weiss's status is. So they were going to ask a direct question about Weiss last night, so I'm interested to know what the answer is.
Ira, we're not doing the video thing on Twitter right now, right?
Oh, the video's everywhere. Everybody just watched and heard that and saw it, and we're coming back on radio in about 10.
What's this guy's name? Davis's dad's
5,
name.
4, 3.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider Sports Talk 1050 WTKA online at WTK.com. I was sharing a story in the break. I can reset it here about the unique relationship between Jaden Davis's family and Matt Weiss. And they forged a real bond. And it was really rooted in how, Jaden Davis's dad, Jeremiah, can be a really, really candid guy. So he said at one point, he was telling me the story, and it's okay to share now because Weiss has done a really good job recruiting them. But to start out, Jeremiah said, man, I told the dude he was a terrible recruiter. And so I started going through telling him, this is what you need to do to recruit my son. This is what you need to do to recruit my son. And so he was taking the coaching, and he started doing a really, really good job of recruiting Jayden. So it is important to them to know what the future holds as far as Weiss is concerned. I know it may seem a little counterintuitive, Brian, that hey, you start out thinking a certain way about a guy, and then you grow this attachment because you build a bond with him, and now his future at Michigan is uncertain based on these alleged computer access crimes, which allegedly stem from hacking emails, hacking University of Michigan emails, allegedly.
Yeah, I mean, what do you want me to say? I wish that hadn't happened.
Well, that would be good.
Or allegedly hadn't happened. I mean,
Allegedly hadn't happened.
I mean, it seems like Weiss is going full innocente on this one, and so I don't know. But on the other hand, as I gather, it's fairly easy to track down these sorts of events. So I don't know, and it just is strange. In a month of strangeness surrounding Michigan football, this one is, maybe the most strange.
It is completely like I cannot imagine what is on someone's email with a University of Michigan account that is so important
that you would hack it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, and hacking it. I mean, this guy isn't like looking up passwords in a hash table, right? He's probably just on someone's computer where the login information is stored. But the facts as presented don't make any sense. So I just got to wait for stuff to come out and see what I think then.
I agree with you there. This doesn't make sense.
Yeah, they said it was over a couple of days' time. That was number one. So they make it sound like it was multiple attempts, or either accesses or at the very least attempts over a span of days. And then it said accounts. It didn't say in accounts. So then now they're making it seem like he was trying to do a few different email accounts, or trying to access a few different email accounts, which we certainly need more details. What we've done, though, is we've eliminated some of the possibilities that were being speculated upon, right?
So it's good that those are eliminated, because that was the first thing my wife said, because she deals with weird things that happen anyway. But like it might potentially be like something. It could be awful, right? Like maybe he was trying to cover something up, or maybe he was trying to go after somebody who had information. Like there are really bad reasons to go into Evil's emails, and very, very few good ones. So it's like we all have to wait and figure out what happened. You can't just say like, "Oh, this doesn't make sense. It's probably nothing." It doesn't make sense. It might be nothing, and it might be, a really bad thing, because people usually don't do this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Gotta wait to see. I will say that it does not. It does not make his return a what's the best way to put this?
Slam dunk.
Yeah, for sure, especially when you consider that there have been talk that it could be a McDonald thing again, that the NFL could come beckoning, and then you wouldn't have to worry about recruiting, right? You wouldn't have to worry about recruiting at that point. So we'll see. We'll have to wait to see how the how things work out. Harbaugh can't wait to address it, though. Like he's at least with Davis's, he's gonna have to address it. Now he can't get into any details that he might know about the case, if he even knows them. But what he can do is kind of talk about what his thought process will be moving forward if things work out, and if things don't. I mean, even if things work out, there was talk that he could even make a jump back to the NFL. So what's your plan if he's not here anymore, Jim? I guarantee you that's a question that was asked last night. I'm gonna be interviewing him a little bit later on today about it. So
I hired Davis's dad. He seems like a smart guy.
That was my first thought too. What is he a coach?
No, he's not a coach. He's not a coach. I have to ask. I know he's in sales. I have to ask him his. But he's a military background.
Okay.
Oh,
So that's why. So we got a couple minutes here. Talk a little bit of basketball. Michigan, they man, they let another one get away against Iowa. But fortunate, give them credit that they were able to put that disappointment behind them. Jet goes off for 34 in that game, and it didn't result in a victory. But they come and beat a Northwestern team that's no slouch, Brian. I mean, they're one of the best defensive squads, not just in the
They're-
conference, but in the country, and two guards that pretty good. They put a lot of pressure on you on both ends of the floor.
Man, I haven't watched Big Ten basketball this year and thought to myself, that's a good team.
Of
Except
anyone
for-
or of Northwestern?
Purdue. Purdue's a good team. Everybody else is not very good. And I don't think much of Northwestern, honestly. And I'm glad that Michigan was able to pull off a win there. But you got Chase Audige as your go-to guy. Come on, man.
Well, Chase Audige is a good defender.
He's a good defender, yeah. But he's still jacking up shots from nowheresville, and it's just you're seeing some good things from the team. I think Kobe Buffkin's kind of coming into his own. Doug McDaniel is only making about 4 terrible decisions a game. That's an improvement. He's a freshman point guard. That sounds flippant, but I'm not trying to be flip here. I remember Xavier Simpson as a freshman. I remember Derek Walton as a freshman. So, you're getting some shooting. It's reverting back to reasonable levels. But it's just until Hunter Dickinson seems like something other than the ghost of himself, I just don't see this team going anywhere. And you're seeing some things from Terrace Reed at the 4 that's really interesting. He's able to stay with Chris Murray for chunks of that Iowa game better than anyone else on the roster. Mm-hmm. And they went to that in the Northwestern game when Terrence Williams came out with a couple of real bad lack of effort plays at the beginning of the second half. So yeah, there's some things happening, but it feels like this is an NIT league and this is an NIT team.
What do you think of the 2 big lineup, Craig?
I love it. I've been very happy with what I've seen of Terrace Reed, and I asked Martelli about that last week or 10 days ago in a press conference about the possibility of using that, and he was optimistic that they could do something there. And then it showed up, or has been showing up a bit.
Look at you, Craig. You gave him an idea, man.
No, I didn't give him an idea. I asked about it, and he said no. They've been going that direction to some extent, and so I really like what I'm seeing out of Michigan. I know we don't have a lot of time. We'll get to it later or next week, but I really like what I'm seeing. I'm seeing Kobe is becoming what Sam, you and I thought he would become. And he's really worked hard in his defense, and he's becoming a decent defender. He's a phenomenal offensive player with beautiful mechanics on his shot. He's a tough guy. He'll go to the basket. I can't say enough about him. I think Doug is improving. I agree with Brian. He's making fewer mistakes, and that's what he needs to do. He doesn't finish great, mostly because of his size, but that's going to come, I think. I love Terrace Reed. I love his ability to move his feet, and Jet can shoot, and Jet is trying a little more on defense. He was clueless early, and there's some improvements there. So Hunter,
he's gonna be a lottery pick now, man. I think he's played his way in.
He may be,
unfortunately, because I was like, hope we get a couple of years out of him, but
Tim talks to the scouts all the time, and he said they're telling him if he wants to come out, he's a lottery pick now. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I suspect that Mom will have a large say in this. I have a hunch she may be in charge in this. So whatever she thinks makes sense is probably what's going to happen.
Yeah, the thought is, at least the thought as Tim McCormick put forward, is that, he could go be in the lottery, but is he really ready to go and stick with a club as a rookie?
When has that ever been a real discussion for anybody?
Because it's different. I mean, you're talking about a kid from a family with $100 million. So
that's true.
So you don't have to rush it. You could afford to delay it one more year. You'll still be a lottery pick the next year. Maybe you'll be more ready to stick going in the door. So
that would be
might
really
be
cool.
too optimistic, right? Might be pie in the sky.
Yeah, I mean, the situation with his dad being the coach is the one thing that you think would make this story go in a different direction than the last two, right? Because I honestly, I still can't believe Caleb Houston got drafted by the NBA team.
Right. Well, we'll pick this up. We'll pick this discussion up next week. Much more basketball. I promise you. When we return. Thanks for listening to another edition of the Michigan Insider on Sports Talk 1050 WTK, the Ticket, the official voice of University of Michigan Sports.